It was another huge weekend of hurling, so here we are again, Club Talk Hurling, brought to you by orgaretro.com. If you want to get 15% off jerseys such as this one here, this Wexford one, or the Galway one that Michael Verney is wearing, go to orgaretro.com and put in the promo code RGAME, 15% off. Great jerseys, so go and do it. Now, I'm wearing the Wexford colours, so we're going to have to start by talking about the Wexford hurling final at the weekend. It was on TG Carr, very enjoyable game, but much like Shelmaliers have been going for a while. You know, we saw them against Fate Harriers in the quarter-final. They held them at arm's length throughout a lot of the game. And the same here against, like, they'd beaten Glyn Barntown well. And they beat Gorey pretty well for a finish 3-18 to 3-11.
Yeah, that's despite yourself and Derek McGrath both tipping up Gorey to win the game. And you also got the Waterford Senior Hurling Championship semi-final wrong, both tipping Mount Sion, whereas yours truly tipped Passage and he tipped Shelmaliers. And you abandoned Shelmaliers, having put them number one in your power ranking a couple of weeks before that. But it's kind of a mad thing. We talked about last week, like the Kildare Hurling Championship has been delayed another 2 weeks with lockdown, and the Waterford Hurling Championship is over. But by all accounts, or the Wexford Hurling Championship is over. By all accounts, everyone in Wexford seemed absolutely delighted with the system of play and the fact that they were able to focus on hurling. Shelmaliers just been brilliant. Really, a real workman-like side, but they've just gotten better and better as the championship progressed. Simon Donoghue said after the semi-final win that people, said they maybe weren't a high-scoring team or they're just a hard-working team. They put up 22 points against Fate Harriers, 320 against Glyn Barntown, and then 318 in what really was a 7-point hammering. They were probably 10 or 15 points better than Avena. Just really played really cute. Totally neutralised Conor MacDonald, just totally crowded him out. Interestingly, probably used a similar tactic maybe that Wexford used against Kilkenny in the Leinster final last year on Pádraig Walsh. They just crowded him out under the high ball, made sure he got absolutely no space. Really brilliant performance, and they'd have a fair shot at probably doing the double now, I'd say.
Yeah, I saw that as a 7-point hammer. Would you concur with that? Because
yeah, I think it was. Yeah, to be honest with you, they were well in control the whole way.
Ross Banville was very, very impressive up in the forward line, and it's not a team of stars. We've probably talked about that before. They are, more than the sum of their parts. Ross Banville very good, as I said. Joe Kelly, he was they always had an outlet when they were going up the field with the ball. Whether it's Glenn Malone bursting through at pace, whether it's his brother Brian, they just seem to be able to come out with pace. They're so comfortable handing the ball off to one lad and the next. They're patient enough to turn it around and give it to someone else if it isn't working. And they found a way to always have numbers around Conor MacDonald, so I think he just got a point from playing the game. He wasn't really in it that much otherwise. Carl Dunbar, he got a goal, scuffed one in. His leg was obviously strapped up. I think you're assuming that he wasn't 100% and he was taken off with probably 7 or 8 minutes to go. So to some degree maybe Gorey weren't playing with a full hand. But still in all, a lot of their players didn't get into the game the way we felt they should. Charlie McGuckie, and you can see there's hurling in him. He was taken on off late on also. So from that point of view, it felt like a fairly complete performance, and what a place to do it too. But strange and all, just to play that out in front of nobody. And I think Joe Kelly was it Ross Banville was asked about it afterwards, and he was talking about how there was a few hundred people socially distanced now, but lined up at the bridge as they were on the way across to the match, which would have been great, but very, very unusual.
Yeah, it is a very strange one, and just something like what's it like to win a county title? I wonder with nobody there. What are the celebrations like after? There's some good quotes from Brian Malone after. He's obviously, I think he's 33 or 34 now. He was saying about just read out the quotes there that my colleague Colin Keys had in the Independent this morning. Said, I know my parents would love to be here. I have a wife and 2 kids, and they go to all the games. I have 2 little boys, and they would be into me after the game. It's a whole family thing. They love it. I know the whole club, everyone's parents and the wider community, they love going to the games. The fact that we got to a county final and they couldn't come, it is tough, but it is made easier by the fact that we won and we can go and see them now. But yes, it's very strange playing a county final with no support or no crowd. In 2014 when we won the football, 2014 and when we won the football in 2018, we had all the kids in here. When we ran out into the pitch, there was a parade. I brought my little boy around to cheer the crowd on county final day, the big buzz around. That's what you dream of playing in, and you compare it to today where there's only 40 people from each club. It is very, very strange. And the parade of bringing the cup back to every pub in the parish, filling the cup up, all that, this kind of crack, that's probably all gone. Be very interesting to know what Shelmaliers actually were able to do last night within reason. How do you go and celebrate it? Is it the sort of thing where the dinner dance will probably be multiplied by 20 whenever they eventually do have that, because everyone will be the first time that everyone will actually be able to be there to celebrate. But it is a very, very, it'd be a weird sensation while jumping in on top of each other on the field after, and hugging and all that kind of crack would be the initial reaction. But then you're waiting to meet the parents, the brothers and sisters, the girlfriends, the wives, all the friends coming in, backslapping, all that kind of crack. And it'd be very, very strange, kind of eerie kind of feeling without that. You'd celebrate the initial couple of minutes, and then you'd be like, whoa, where's my mother, where's my father, where's all my best friends, all that kind of crack, which everything that comes with it. You do it for yourself, but you do it for all those people as well. It'd be very strange for them not to be experiencing that with you.
There's less chance of playing the occasion though, because that would get on top of a lot of people. But for Shelmaliers, just a very complete performance. I was just so impressed with them, and even one of the goals that they conceded, this could have been by more. It was probably a mistake from the goalkeeper. I'm sure he'd say that himself. But even so, they got through, and I almost wonder what would Shelmaliers be like in Leinster now if they got a crack at it. They'd probably love it. I mean, they're so good at using the ball. You can see that the football influence is there, because I'd have always said that about Gaelic footballers versus hurlers. They're far more comfortable and composed on the ball. And it's obviously easier in Gaelic football because you have the extra steps, you can take your solos, all that kind of stuff. It's not like in hurling where once you catch it twice, you're under pressure, you have to get rid of it, and if you're under pressure, it's very, very difficult. But I'd be very interested. Do you think they could make that step that maybe St. Martin's haven't quite done?
I think they could if they were going into Leinster and were still just focusing on hurling. I think they definitely could, because they're obviously a side that have tried by just playing the small ball. They're taking all the football instincts kind of and putting them together in hurling. And the way in football you could be attacking the opposition 65 and you're recycling the ball. They're really good at doing that in hurling as well. They're not going down blind alleys. They're not hitting the balls into the into the full forward line if they're outnumbered or anything like that. They're recycling the ball all around the pitch, and they were brilliant at doing that. And even just a special mention for Jody Donoghue. I saw a tweet from the Wexford GA, official Wexford GA account, and they were saying they made a mistake. They didn't give a point to Jody Donoghue, and far be it for them to take a point off a corner back. He scored in the last 3 games for them from corner back, which is outstanding, really. Simon Donoghue's brother, some brilliant scores. Like, imagine to say that you scored in all 3 knockout games from corner back. Usually you're just pulling a jersey or kind of trying to get in a lad's togs or something like that and make sure he doesn't score. To score a point in each of their knockout games is phenomenal. And I just think they're a side that have just been able to try by just focusing on the small ball. And I think to be a very difficult proposition in Leinster, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think it's the way they're playing allows backs to score, because there are lads coming off the shoulder, they're turning and recycling. So if you're like Gorey there, at times it feels like maybe Conor MacDonald is the only one forward. Like, some of the other backs are going to push out a little bit and be options to take the ball on and have a chance then to maybe do a 1-2 and have a score. So yeah, good team, and interesting to see how they got in the football. Now the Waterford semi-finals were on at the weekend. We'll come to Passage and Mount Sion, which you were at. But Ballygunner fairly heavily saw off Lismore for a finish, and Lismore had been putting up big scores, but it was 2-25 to Ballygunner here. Lismore 110. And actually after the second water break in the second half, I don't think Lismore scored again all the way to the finish. Now Desi Hutchinson scored 2-8, 2-7 in the first half. Pádraig Mahoney hit 12 points. And it's now 37 games unbeaten for Ballygunner. It's probably no shock they won this game, is it?
No, definitely not. No, we've talked about Lismore, kind of, they usually adopt that kind of Brazil tactic where they'll happily beat you like 6-5, or they'll happily beat you, 225 to 224. They'll think they'll put up a bigger score than you, but they were never going to be able to put up a big score against Ballygunner realistically. Just chatting to a few boys down in Walsh Park yesterday, a couple of kind of strange things kind of happened. They said like Morris stayed in full forward the whole of the first half, despite being absolutely starved of possession, which they thought was strange. Desi Hutchison was one-on-one kind of battle inside with him and the full-back. No one sitting in front of him, no one protecting him. I believe they left the same player on him for the whole of the game.
That's throwing a lad to the Wolves. Like, that is fully throwing a lad to the Wolves who are going to allow him to be 1v1 against a lad who was a professional soccer player a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. I know if I was getting a scutcheon like that, I'd be like, from my own point of view and from the team's point of view, I'd be putting my hand up and going trying to switch with a fella and get somebody else in on him, or I'd be trying to play a sweeper maybe and bring someone back. I know that maybe Lismore were trying to win the game or trying to make sure they had it, but like, move a sweeper back and try and stem the tide at least. Like when he's after getting 1-2 or 1-3, you have to realise this lad's absolutely on song. We need to do something here. Like no more than like Clare did twice against Galway in the 2018 semi-finals. They brought a sweeper back and were able to stem the tide a little and stop the blood loss, get themselves back into the game. But it doesn't seem like Lismore did anything like that. And yeah, it's funny, Ballygunner, 37 games unbeaten now. They're probably exactly where everybody thought they were going to be, and it's set up for an interesting final because Passage were the last side to beat them in 2013, and I was down at that Passage Mount Sion game. It was the first game I've been at since the different circumstances with small crowds or no crowds. And it was an absolute belter. I don't know why. Maybe it was just because the Passage bench was right in front of me, and every point was greeted like there were 1,000 people in that little small bench on the line. They were brilliant. It was a brilliant game. Kind of had everything except spectators, start to finish. Stephen Roach got an early goal, kind of a mistake in the Passage defence. They were 1-1 to a point up. Passage absolutely flew back, were level by the first water break. I think it was 1-4-7. Then completely took over with the breeze at their backs. They were 17 points to 1-6 up at half time. They just were hitting over long distance points at will. Mikey Cummins, Killian Fitzgerald, who else did they have? Owen Connors was brilliant as well. Loads of long range scores. They didn't hit ball in to the full forward line, which was slightly outnumbered for the sake of it. And then when they did, Liam Flynn, kind of like a Johnny Glynn, Tony Dorn style full forward, that left-handed full forward as well. Every ball that went in, he was brilliant. He scored 5 from play. They were 17 points to 1-6 up at the break, but Mount Sion absolutely roared back. Austin Gleeson, who'd been really, really subdued in the first half. A funny one, he'd been sent off in the past 2 games, and I think, don't know whether it was something in his head. He didn't really get into the play. He was maybe a bit tentative early on. He'd one outrageous shot for a goal, about 25 yards out, hit the post. But apart from that, Callum O'Neill really kept him under grips in the first half. But then he thundered into the second half, 4 points, one from about 30 yards out from his own goal. Another point where all that kind of physical condition that we've seen, his body transformation just was totally exemplified. I think he sold at the guts of about 100 yards, probably with a 1-2 in the middle of that, and then put the ball over the bar off his hurl on the sideline. But I think he'll regret, they had a free, 61 minutes played, they had a free, 21-yard free. He was fouled when going through for goal. They were 2 down, and rather than tipping it over, he went for goal, and it kind of took the wind out of their sails a bit. There was definitely time to be played because the referee ended up playing into the 66th minute. I know there was an injury, but there was definitely 3 minutes left, and I thought it was foolish because I think the way the breeze was, Mount Sion definitely would have got at least 1, if not 2 more shots on goal and could have drawn the game. And I thought it was a bit of panic. But this game really had everything. It was a really interesting one. John Whitty came on for Passage in the 40th minute as a blood sub, was on the field 2 minutes, put over a pint, was taken off when Paul Flynn, who he came on for, who was bloodied, went off. He came back on a minute later, scored another point. He came on as a full sub a minute later, scored another point, and then about 4 or 5 minutes later scored another point. And I don't know if I've ever seen an impact sub like that, to come on as a blood sub, score a point, come on as a sub, an official sub, and score a point, then another point. And then when they were trying to waste time near the end, he got the ball in the corner and just started flicking it over lads' heads and was doing all sorts of mad things. I was chatting to Michael Walsh after the Passage manager, and he said, he had a couple of injuries, had surgery earlier on the year, played junior maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, really impressed, was called up to the senior panel and has been brilliant since. Everything that Passage wanted to go right went right for them yesterday. It was because I would have thought if they were going to win the game, it was going to be 1-14, 1-15, but no, they were brilliant from start to finish. Absolutely outstanding display.
Yeah, so a couple of guys that I'd be curious about, and also obviously people messages in at our game HQ, and we'll talk about it in the next show if you have any good comments. How did Noel Connors play, and was he sort of sweeping from centre back? I saw pictures online, he was wearing number 6. How did Blondie O'Neill go for Mount Sion? And Austin Gleeson, like you talked about some of the moves he had in the game and that 100-yard run with the 1-2 in the middle of it. Did he look like he was gliding across the turf, 2014 to 2017 edition of Austin Gleeson?
Noel Connors played the kind of fullback / cornerback on Stephen Roach. He picked him up. He was probably at fault for the first goal. Kind of two passage defenders kind of were like the meat in the sandwich, and Roach kind of slipped in the back. The ball went through. He scored it. Was very, very solid thereafter, though. The passage defence, I think that was the only goal chance they had, apart from two frees at the end. That was the only goal chance Mount Sion had. He was tight. It was always like Stephen Roach is always going to be dangerous. He got a point off in the second half, but he marshalled their defence very, very well, organised it very well. Blondie O'Neill, to be fair, outside of place ball, don't think he missed a place ball, but outside of place balls, had very little influence on the game, to be honest with you. Austin Gleeson, the only thing I'd say is, like, he kind of got caught between two stools in the first half again. He was kind of moving around, but wasn't really anywhere, wasn't on the ball enough, definitely wasn't on the ball enough. Thundered it into it probably the last 20 to 25 minutes and was absolutely outstanding. But they probably needed him more when things weren't going well. Now, he definitely took the fight to them in the last 20 or 25 minutes, but they needed him more when things weren't going well. A couple of early second half wides from Austin and even from Jamie Gleeson, a couple of kind of bad wides that could have kept them more in the game. But it looked like they were coming with a run, and then maybe that free, which I just thought it was foolish to go for a goal. Like, they didn't need a goal. They weren't 5 down. Tip over the free, go 1 down, and win the next couple of balls and get a chance. But a brilliant win for Passage. Passage seemed to be Mount Sion's bogey team in recent years, and Passage is only like a little fishing village of less than 1,000 people, and it's amazing really what they've done. The first county, only founded in 1960, first county final in 2013, county final win, and now they were beaten in the 16 final, and now they're in another final. It's an amazing achievement, really.
Yeah, we'll probably come to this when we talk about the Galway Hurling Championship, about the last minute sort of freeze, but one thing that I think is very important if you're taking a late free and you need to go for a goal, but a point will kind of do because maybe there's a little bit more time, you more or less have to aim for the crossbar, even hit a top spin. So worst case scenario, either a defender or a goalkeeper tips it over. What this free you're talking about in the Mount Sion game, was it hit low? Was it, did it have that kind of worst case scenario, we'll get a point out of it? Because if it was hit low, if it gets stopped, it's going to be cleared mostly.
No, more kind of chest high, I would say, to be honest with you. So it was either going to go in or it wasn't. I totally understand what you're saying. It's funny, like, you see with ladies football, if I was coaching ladies football, I'd always tell them to aim for the crossbar with everything, because the goalkeepers are invariably a bit shorter, and you get goals or you get a good few goals or you get a lot of points. And I would say the same with a free. It's kind of the percentage play, or it could take a flick and easily go in, or it could go in straight, or it could take a flick and go over the bar. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. They had a late free at the very, very end from Blondie O'Neill, and he hit low, and one of the defenders stopped it with his foot. But I just thought it was a bit panicky. Like, there should have been a message coming in from the line to take the point, because they were the ones in the ascendancy, and it kind of took the wind out of their sails. But Passage, absolutely outstanding. Michael Walsh, I think he's been there 4 or 5 years now, or involved for 4 or 5 years, and you could just see, like, he was chatting after, like, that meant as much to him as any win with Kilkenny when he was playing, any win with the Kilkenny 21s when he was over there, or any win with Westmeath when he was involved there as coach under Michael Ryan. A brilliant win, and they were probably tipped to not get out of their group realistically earlier on the year. Massive result.
Do you know, like, as we're talking about the frees and the 21-yard frees, I'm there thinking, how do you like to set up as a defender for these? So obviously I think the goalkeeper takes centre stage. He's out in front of everyone and no one gets in his way when he's trying to block it. But if you have 5 others on the line, or 6, whatever you're allowed on the line, I'd be very much of a mind of the lads on the post. They're obviously going to guard everything on the post and sort of have Hurley's high. The 2 lads either side of the goalkeeper behind him, I'd nearly be saying, lads, ye focus on any ball coming in low, so you can sort of dive across it either side. So you've the lads to the side covering high, you're covering low. Do you have any sort of a thought process on it? Like, the goalkeeper is going to get everything in his radius, or should?
Yeah, I suppose one of the key things is that lads don't get sucked in. The 2 lads on the post, like, everyone can't start leaning into the middle. That's the goalie's area. Like, he's there for a reason. He's obviously a much better shot stopper than everybody else in the line, you'd imagine. So he should be taking everything, in the middle and even to the left and to the right of that. The two lads man their posts, and I think that's a good tactic for the two lads in behind the goalie to be going low and nearly to be crouched down and ready to go, because that's probably the only one maybe that the keeper won't stop, because he's going to be out in front and going to have less time to react if it is low. So I think that's a fairly good tactic, but you really do need to communicate, because lads can end up getting in the way of each other. I remember Brendan Cummins wasn't particularly happy with Paddy Matter in the 2009 final. He kind of felt he almost hooked him trying to stop Shefflin's, was it a penalty or a 21? I can't remember.
It was a penalty that should have been a 21-yard free, or even a free out for Tipperary. But hey, look, that was Diarmuid Kerwin's decision.
Yeah, but it's just like it can easily happen. I remember the Clare boys in the 2013 final in the replay. There was probably too many of them on the line.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Those were some of the most dramatic moments I've ever seen in All Ireland finals. Those penalties, that's why I'm sickened that those are gone in the 21-yard frees they can bring in, because the drama when Anthony Nash used to be stepping over them.
Yeah, I remember all the Clare boys, it was a real Davy tactic, every minute detail. They all had goalie hurls. So there was probably about 11 or 12 of them on the line. And if you put 11 or 12 lads standing in an area, and the size of those goalie hurls, probably 2.5 times the size of a normal boss, if you put that all together and think of the amount of space that Nash could have put that ball in for it to actually go into the net, it's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, it does take a bit of organisation to make sure. I never have more than 5 on the line, including the goalie. I think 5 is well enough, to be honest with you. Maybe 6, but no more than that.
Am I right in thinking in 2014, when Tip were missing penalties in the All-Ireland against Kilkenny, that Richie Hogan and TJ Reid were the two lads on the line with Owen Murphy that day, weren't they? Which is strange, because you normally think it's backs, but they just said, let's get the two tastiest hurlers we have in there.
Yeah, Richie probably would have played underage in goals, he was probably playing realistically in goals for Kieran's teams. In first year he could have been playing for the under-16 team in goals, because he was just that talented, and maybe they were minding him in the goals a bit more. And probably the same at club level, he was probably playing under-14 in goals maybe when he was 9 or 10, and probably TJ the same. But yeah, you probably put your best sometimes you put your most skilled hurlers in goals for penalties as well. There's two ways of looking at it: put your most skilled hurler, or put some lad that'll take a bullet to the head and doesn't give a damn. He put his head in the way of the ball if he has to.
The Clare Championship took centre stage the weekend, because a couple of the games were on RTE, and I watched them belatedly there on Saturday night. So 6 Mile Bridge they saw off Broadford, and I thought to myself, an awful lot of these players have great touches, but I thought they were kind of average enough teams. The striking wasn't unbelievable. I didn't think the games were unbelievable. I wasn't blown away by it. It did stand out to me that Derek Fahey in goals for 6 Mile Bridge, that he put over a score from his own 21, which is some going altogether. But 6 Mile Bridge fairly easily saw off Broadford. I mean, there are probably more county players on the 6 Mile Bridge side. Let's be honest, there aren't really county players on the Broadford side as well. So fairly average game, but 6 Mile Bridge doing what they needed to do. And it's probably not a massive shock that, Ballier aside, Clare teams haven't really done a whole lot in the Munster Club Championship and the All-Ireland series in recent years. Because I couldn't imagine 6 Mile Bridge going on winning All-Ireland. But maybe I'm being a bit harsh, am I?
Not necessarily. I think they're a solid side. I don't think they're outstanding or anything like that. Definitely not. Broadford hit an awful lot of wides, and I just thought 6 Mile Bridge were an awful lot kind of cuter. They just had a bit more experience. It probably wouldn't blow you away. Maybe. They wouldn't definitely. Couldn't see them blowing away. It's more kind of getting a team into an arm wrestle. I think if they were going a long provincial run or an All Ireland run like that, if they're able to get into that type of a sequence, kind of in wintry type conditions. But no, I wouldn't have said the standard was unreal. Definitely not. No.
Yeah, Ballier they saw off Kilmaley 120 to 114. I mean, Tony Kelly just prancing around like a pony, and I mean that in a good way, because he got some great scores. People don't take that the wrong way, saying I'm suggesting I'm saying he's a show pony. Definitely not. Some absolutely brilliant scores, but they had a really nice spine to the team. If you think about Paul Flanagan, former under-21 All-Ireland winning captain, full-back, Jack Brown centre back, Tony Kelly there, you had Gary Brennan in the half forward line, Niall Deasy in the full forward line. So you've got a bit of size and power and athleticism and inter-county experience the whole way up and down the field. For Kilmaley, you've Conor Cleary at centre back. Dara Keane looks really good. He would have been, I think, in and around the county panel before, but definitely an excellent hurler. Like Gary Brennan, when he caught ball, we all know him from the Clare football team and the international rules and all that. Just when he gets a ball, and snaps, whether it's snapping a puck out or coming off the shoulder, and he runs down the barrel of a defence. Very, very hard to stop. I wonder, have Clare ever tried to lure him into the county hurling panel?
I think Davey kind of made a remark before that there was a call or a text made or something, and Gary kind of almost laughed it off, because he would consider himself like 90% probably a footballer more than a hurler, but he definitely takes all the best attributes of football to hurling. Like he was running off the shoulder a lot of the time the other day, and once he gets moving, he's just nearly impossible to stop. And his hurling has probably sharpened up a good bit as well. He took some lovely scores too. Funny enough, Pierce Lillis, who would be another Clare footballer, he was brilliant in defence too. They Ballier take in a good few kind of football clubs in as well. They take in Clondagad as well. They looked very, very good. Looked fairly well oiled. I thought it's a smart technique for lads to be trying to find Gary Brennan when he's running through that kind of. You're not going to be able to stop him realistically. He's the modern day football midfielder who can go box to box, and he can bring that to hurling as well. And at club level, someone like him is going to be very, very difficult to stop.
Yeah, and Ballier are going to be hard to stop overall. Éire Óg beat Carlow 118 to 115, so that's a sixth quarter final in 7 years for them, and they outscored Carlow, who'd been in a few finals recently, 110 to a point over the last 20 minutes. Danny Russell, he hit 111. Shane O'Donnell, David Reedy, Darren O'Brien, they were all good, and they had been down by 6 points, I think 2/3 into the game, and it was that Danny Russell goal that obviously turned things around. But that's some turnaround, and for Carlow, you wonder how much their preparations have been affected by the COVID in the area.
Yeah, well, they're playing hurling and football. Like we were saying last week, if they're going to go on a charge in the two of them, like because they're behind, there's a lag of fixtures. They could end up playing like every 3 or 4 days for a couple of weeks just to kind of catch back up. So they're kind of gone out with a hurling now. It's a pity. When you look at Carlow on paper, you're thinking that's a team that obviously they were beaten in the Munster final in 2014. I think you're thinking that's a team that could go well at provincial level if there was a provincial championship, but they just never got going. Éire Óg, in fairness, would have a decent spine to them as well, as you say, Danny Russell, Shane O'Donnell, David Reedy. I think Reedy was missing for their last game. They seem to have a full complement yesterday, and were very, 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 very good by all accounts. So it'd be interesting to see. Like they're only in, that was only to qualify to a quarter final, so that was kind of a preliminary quarter final. Be interesting to see how they go. And the other big game of the weekend was O'Callaghan and Mills 2-16, Kilkenny 13 points. Interesting hearing John Conlon on RT on Saturday evening thought that Kilkenny would win that one. So obviously I don't have much detail on it, but it's obviously a very, very good performance from O'Callaghan and Mills, who no doubt Pat Donlan is still probably steering the ship there, the 2013 All-Ireland winning captain.
Yeah, and I have an interview with him actually from a couple of months ago talking all about his Clare inter-county journey, so search his name there on ourgame.ie. We'll move to the Dublin quarter-finals. So at the weekend, Nafina beat Fogg's double scores 420 to 210. So Nafina's really good form and high scoring form continues. St Vincent's, they lost to Ballyboden, who go through. That was 118 to 1-8. And the thing is, Bowden had started their group stages against Kilmacud Crokes in fairly unimpressive fashion. Like, they were beaten heavily. So they seem to be coming to the boil at the right time now, and they have an awful lot of experience in that team. So once you have yourself back into a semi-final, it's not unusual for a team to be able to cast away that previous form and get going again. Lucan Sarsfields, now this was probably the shock result of the weekend, because Kilmacud Crokes were in such good form, but Lucan Sarsfields beat them 16 points to 112, and Crokes had started quite well, and I think they had 5 points scored early on. They got an injury time goal, so for a huge period of the game they managed only 7 points, and Lucan obviously took over. Ben Coffey on form, Chris Crummy on form playing centre forward, and we saw him playing there for Dublin earlier on in the league this year. He's such a good athlete, such a good player, so that is an absolutely huge result, and more pain for Kilmacud Crokes. And then obviously the other result, for anyone who was watching yesterday, Coola 126, St Bridget's 214. So a comfortable enough win after a very tight county final last year. So just to kind of give the draw for the semi-final then, Coola against Lucan and Ballyboden against Nafina.
Yeah, just shocked by Lucan Sarsfields and Kilmacud, I have to say. And even listening to Derek McGrath, who was involved with Fayette Harriers, and they went up and played Crokes. And what did he say? They had scored
623.
Yeah, I think it was 627 or something like that. An outrageous score. And you're just thinking, how were they held to 112 Like, this must have just been a real proper shutout from Lucan.
Lucan are an unbelievably competitive team. Like, I mean, they've kind of had an awful lot of semi-finals over the years. They haven't got to a final since 2010. They lost to Ballyboden then. But they're always a really competitive team, and I think in general, anytime I've played against them, you're going to be like really up against it. It's going to be a tight game. They're very athletic, physical, some really good hurlers. You know, they've had that Peter Kelly's obviously had a lot of injury trouble over the years, but they've always had a really good spine, whether it's him, Johnny McCaffrey, Matt McCaffrey, Chris Crummy, Paul Crummy, great hand in there and full forward. So they've always had a good spine to a team, but it's probably just finding a couple of other players to fill a couple of other areas, and I think Ben Coffey's putting up big scores there as well. So as much in all as it is the surprise result of the round. If Crokes were going to win, it wasn't going to be by a whole lot, but it's still surprising to see. It's more shocking to see Crokes out of the championship than it is to see Lucan go through, because they're a good team.
Yeah, it's Lucan, when you name out all the players, they have like 5 or 6 brilliant players there, as you say. But like Kilmacud is a fairly star-studded squad, like, and have been like.
Is it the experience, is it losing the experience of Ryan O'Dwyer and Niall Corcoran this year? Now, they've had obviously an awful lot of pain in finals in recent years, but losing probably 2 of your most experienced players, and like Corcoran was even playing well last year, that sort of stuff has to make an impact.
No, it surely does, yeah. But like for the resources available to them, they've definitely been underachieving the last couple of years as well. Obviously, beat yourselves and ended the bid for the All Ireland 3 in a row in the semi final a couple of years ago, and then went on and were beaten by Ballyboden in a couple of classic games. But for what they have at their disposal, they probably haven't been like. And this is probably symptomatic of it, like. Yeah, Lucan are a good side, but scoring 112 in a county quarter final for what they have and the attacking options that they have, the likes of Oisin O'Rourke, big Ronan Hayes, Fergal Whiteley, like Derek went through their forward line, and you talking about 4 or 5 lads that could be on the Dublin forward line for championship, and then you're thinking they only scored 112. It's just a bit bizarre. The other game, the Coola St. Bridget's game. A big score put by Coola, in fairness, especially considering Conor Callan was injured. 126 without him is big. David Tracy looked to be back to something like his best form, hit 14 points. He only played obviously the first half against Nafina. A very important player, kind of link and play for Coola. They seem to take long range points at will. Jake Malone, very impressive. The only thing I will say is St. Bridget's didn't really lay a hand on them. Like, I'm looking at a couple of scores that Mark Shute got and a few others got, like they were standing up hitting them maybe 45, 65 yards out. They didn't get close enough to them. Something interesting as well, I didn't realise, Derry legend Rory Convery was playing for St. Bridget's. Got a great kind of one-handed flick, kind of a tennis, kind of a slam dunk kind of a goal near the end. It was kind of probably a consolation goal at that stage, but Coola probably exactly where they want to be after being beaten by Nafina the last day. That'll be an interesting game. Lucan will definitely try and bring him into the trenches like they did to Kilmacud, and that's going to be an interesting game. The other semi-final, very, very interesting too, because you have a Bowden side who have all that experience, who maybe looked not down and out earlier on, maybe it's only a month or 6 weeks ago, but they've really, really turned things around. And they've turned things around despite the fact that they're mixing football and hurling every week with a handful of the same bodies. That'll be an interesting game against Nafina. Nafina are now coming into the real kind of the meat and drink of the championship, and it's like they'll be expected to get to a county final, and the pressure will be on them now. So it'll be interesting to see how those 2 semi-finals go.
Yeah, because I think every team that's left there now, they've won a knockout game, and obviously you've had to win a few group games. So pretty much every team there would start to be feeling fairly good about themselves at this stage, and they are fairly mouthwatering in semi-finals. So we'll preview them as we get closer to those fixtures. The Meath Championship, St. Peter's of Dunboyne beating Avon O'Mahony's 217 to 14 points. Ratoath beat Kiltale by a point, 19 points to 212. We'll come to the Galway Championship then. And I watched Sarsfields against Castlegar on Saturday. And Castlegar were 6 points up going into injury time. And they started to choke a little bit as far as I was concerned. Gerard Farragher missed the 65, and normally you'd never expect him to do that, and I think that would have kept it out at maybe 4 points, and there wasn't too much time left at that stage. But Sarsfields kept going, and ultimately they got a free on the 21. Now it was actually funny towards the very end. They were obviously pushing for a goal, and there was I think a throw ball on the 21, and there was 27 players in the shot, more or less inside within 25 yards of the goal, within the D to the goal line. There was something like 27 players there. Ended up being a free. Kevin Cooney stepped over it, lashed it into the roof of the net. Castlegar, absolute disaster, because this was a de facto knockout game in the last round of the group. But disastrous way to flop from 6 points ahead to then losing it with a 21-yard free at the very, very end. Absolute disaster. And this was a Castlegar team that were without Enda Kincannon and Jack Coyne, who'd been putting up a lot of their scores, and then to just be in that winning position and leave it behind you, just a disaster.
No, that's an absolute killer. Yeah, like to concede like two kind of frees at the end, goals from frees, is just it's a real killer, because you've dominated the game, and then maybe kind of sat back and you're just kind of you're waiting for the line rather than kind of chasing the line, if you know what I mean, rather than trying to drive it over the top. And when you leave yourself in that position where you're kind of hanging, I don't know, things tend to happen. It's a sequence of events where you're hoping for the finish line, and things just happen. A lad misses a little block on a long ball, and it ends up in an area that it just shouldn't be in. And it happens so often in games whereas when experienced teams that know how to get over the line down through the years, they just push on. A 6 point lead turns into an 8 or 9 point lead, and the game is totally put to bed. But when you leave sides in it like that, I was following this on Twitter, and I just couldn't believe it when I saw the final score, because Cashel were well ahead and well on top the whole way through. But when you leave sides in with a chance, there's always an opportunity for them to have a little smash and grab, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so I watched this game, and I watched when I had a chance before I was going off to play my own match. I watched a bit of Tommy Larkins against Capitagle. Now Jason Flynn was playing for Tommy Larkins, and he was floating around, got a couple of nice scores early on, but obviously Capitagle took over. Damien Joyce there, centre back, sort of leading the show. I'll just run through a couple of the other fixtures and then come back to the point I want to make. So Athenry, they beat Clymer Daly 23 points to 216. Ardrahan bet Baha. Is it Baha or Bea? I always forget how to pronounce that. 12 points to 10. Clymer Daly, have I read that one out already? I think I have, yeah. Loughrea beat Tina Abbey Denairi by 316 to 214. Lee Mellows, they saw off Ormore Marie 213 to 17 points. And then we'll come to St. Thomas's against Portumna in a little while. But just a point I wanted to make, having watched the Sarsfields game, the Tommy Larkins game, even having watched some of the Clare Club games over the weekend, is I'm curious, and I definitely want our viewers to have a comment on this. Is there something to do with the size profile and the general body shape of players in the likes of, Galway and Clare, that there's a real difference between the physique of a club player versus a county player? Like Joe Cooney was playing for Sarsfields, and he was sort of sweeper in the first half, but his body shape, he just looked like an absolute tank, and I mean all of this in a positive way. He looked like a machine moving around the pitch. And the rest of the players just did not look anything like that. And it was the same with Jason Flynn when he was playing for Tommy Larkins. And I looked at the Clare Championship as well. There's an awful lot of very small players, plenty of skinny players, plenty of lads who just don't have that same physique that you generally see across the board when you're, let's say, watching the Dublin Championship, the Kilkenny Championship, the Tipperary Championship, did I say Wexford and Dublin? Yeah, those sort of teams. Like there isn't that same pronounced difference in how players are built and put together. So I think is that into something why maybe Clare teams aren't regularly pushing for All Ireland's, Ballier aside, why Galway teams have taken a step back, that those average club players aren't preparing the same way. Maybe I'm totally off the boil, but just size wise at the very least it stood out to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I didn't see any of the Galway Championship at the weekend. There were probably a handful of players even in the Waterford Championship that I saw where you're just thinking that teams would maybe have a tactic if they wanted to try and exploit something on the opposition team, that they would actually go after them fitness wise, not necessarily pace wise, but fitness wise, and kind of run them into the ground. There was probably a few. We've played plenty of Galway teams down through the years before, and there probably would be a couple of them here or there. You play a Dublin team, you definitely wouldn't find one of them. I don't think you would anyway. Anytime we've played any Dublin team, play a Kilkenny team, no, I can't say I've ever seen anyone where you're thinking, yeah, we could get at this lad fitness wise or anything like that. I don't know how pronounced it is. But it's an interesting one. It's not something that I would have necessarily thought about until you brought it up. But yeah, I'm sure you'll definitely enamor yourself more to some of those counties by such comments.
But I'm not even looking to slate. I actually want to ask the viewers, the people that watch games regularly in this county, are you seeing the same level of conditioning across the board in different counties? And that's just something that stood out to me. Like Clare, as in general, there seems to be an awful lot of size profile of very small, diminutive, fast, skillful players. And like the touch is brilliant in the Clare Championship. But as I was watching the Sarsfields and Castlegar game, I'll be honest, it was one of the poorest quality senior club matches that I've watched in a long, long time. An awful lot of lads getting blocked down needlessly. Running up the sideline, running into traffic, throwing it up, and you can't but get blocked down. There was one wing back, he got blocked down 3 times in the first half, and I was nearly smashing my head off the wall looking at it. I just thought it was very, very poor standard in those particular games, and maybe those teams aren't happy with how they played, and Castlegar can say they were missing 2 of their attackers. But the point in general, people, please get back. I'm not just slating those counties for the sake of it. I'm just curious to know if you agree with that, if that's something you see. Is that why maybe Clare don't always contest for All Irelands, because the size profile is an issue? But yeah, just St. Thomas is then against Portumna.
Just one quick one, Shane, before we go into that. I think we left out Mullya were beaten by a Haskra Fohan, I think you pronounce it.
Fahina,
yeah, I think Mullya were in a winning position right until the very end, and I think there was a point effort for a Haskra that was going over the bar, and I think the keeper pulled it down, and Pádraig Mannion followed it in and bundled it into the net, I think. And a Haskra are now up senior A after nabbing that spot from Mullya, which is probably a big upset realistically, because Mullya would have been senior A in Galway for a long time. But you're going to bring it into the Thomas's Portumna score line. The result, everything about it is, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I saw it, I have to say.
438 to 15 points. 438. That equates to 50 points versus 15. That's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, no, it is outrageous. And kind of the thing, I have a friend over in China there, Brian Nolan, actually, was on to me on the WhatsApp, and he was saying, he was talking to me about the score, and he was like, lad, this score now, we need to talk about this. He said, when will you ever see a team putting up 38 points in a 60-minute club game? And I was thinking about it, and then we were talking about it, and said, on average, like how much time is the ball out of play when each of those points went over the bar? And you're probably thinking, okay, maybe 15 or 20 seconds. And it's not as if Portumna like waved the white flag completely and didn't score down the far end. They scored 15 points down the other end, but Jack Thomas was able to score 38 points, which is just unbelievable. And I just put up on Twitter on Saturday morning just to see, like, had anybody ever seen anything like that before? And just a couple of the comments that came back. Noel Russell from Borough just said there was a junior hurling game in Cork a few years ago where the total score came to 80 points. I think one of the teams scored 8 or 9 goals. Mark Townsend said make the ball heavier, which I've been saying for years. Our Kilnadima Leitrim hurlers, this Mairead Deely said they beat Loughrea by 35 points a few years ago, 623 to 6. Joe O'Reilly, which makes a very valid point. The scoreline is only half the story. One of the greatest club hurling teams for many years, some decline, talking about Portumna. Shane Keegan, heavily involved in the soccer, as we both know. Same tally, but at least it took Cork 10 minutes longer to run it up. He's talking about the Cork 10-20, Laois 1-13 qualifier game from 2011. Danny McGovern replied, Offaly best Laois 320 to 610. That was in 1980 or 81. For years this was the highest scoring losing score. That was the 610 that Laois scored. Paddy Curran scored a free from 100 yards with the old style Slater. Offaly went on to win the All Ireland, I think it was in 81. Tomas McCarthy said Ballygunner scored 730 in a group game 2 years ago. Jonathan Davey said in Sligo, Cooler Strandhill put 1636 on Tubber Curry in the Senior Hurling Championship a few years ago. Yeah, a couple of other ones as well. Wine Gap lost an under-16 match to Carrick Shock 10-19 to a point, as Seamus Steve Norris said. That's in Kilkenny. Playing at the Herbs put up one. He said Burr beat Brosna Gales in 2015 5-34. They scored 5-34. Coolderry hit 1-31 against Brosna Gales that same year. Kilcormac hit 4-32 against Ballyskennock. Shinrome at 1-30 against Ballyskennock as well. And DPW Offaly, Damien Whitehead, Kilcormac 8-36, Balnamere 8 points. But 38 points against a team that won the Club All Ireland
6
years ago, was it? 6 years ago. And with Joe Canning in their midst, it's a phenomenal score. I know Portumna were relegated already, but it's still an absolutely it's a mind-blowing tally, really.
Yeah, and this is a team that had 4 red cards in the space of 2 games. You wonder, is it a simple case of like, this is a team that was in junior back in the 90s and kind of worked its way up, and then all of a sudden, the Cannings, the Hayeses, all these, and they just exploded and they took off and they took over in Galway for sure, and obviously racked up a number of All-Ireland titles. Is it a case then that they just all retired at once, or they all got old at once, and then you're just going back to what the team normally would have been, or that this is the slow process of going back to being an intermediate team, being a junior team, whatever it might be? Now, maybe I'm wrong, and hopefully they have players coming through and they can arrest that. But is that often the case with teams, that they get a generation, they make a burst, they ended up having a sublime generation of players, but that then you kind of go back to what you always were?
It can often happen. If I look at it in Offaly in the 80s and 90s, so that there were probably 2 kind of golden generations of players, and kind of probably maxed out what they could achieve. Obviously got 4 All-Irelands within that time, but we didn't look after what the next generation that was coming. So we were going really well at that time, didn't really look after the next generation. As a result, we're back down in Christy Ring at the moment, 20 years after contesting our last senior All-Ireland final. The same, like, probably a similar thing in Portumna. They probably play B underage in most grades. This has been well flagged now to me, because Portumna's not a million miles from us, and you'd be chatting, lads, and you'd be hearing, without disrespecting anyone, you'd be hearing that there's very little coming, that they're not, winning anything at underage, that they're not that competitive underage. When Damien Hayes goes, when Ollie Canning goes, when Ivan Canning, when Davy Canning, when these lads go, they're really, really going to struggle. And even, that great kind of Portumna team, and even the Damien Hayes only retired last year. Not too sure if Ollie is still playing, but the age profile would be still pretty high. And I think this is the first year, from what I believe, that they've kind of started bringing in some young lads into the fray, and maybe that process maybe should have happened a bit sooner. I'm not sure of that, but it's a fair fall from grace now, to be fair.
Yeah, because they were actually pretty close in that game against Sarsfields until the 2 red cards with maybe 10 minutes to go earlier on in the group, but just things seem to have capitulated ever since. We'll move on then to the Cork Senior Hurling Championship, because it's big news to see Imokilly, the 3 in a row champions, knocked out by UCC. So that was 123 to 120, and everything looked to be in order for Imokilly coming into, I think, the last minute or 2 of play, because Will Leahy scored a goal and that put them ahead. But then UCC hit 4 points in a row. So Imokilly out. I'd say there'd be a lot of people pretty happy in Cork, especially club teams who hate to see divisional teams dominate.
Yeah, the divisional teams are a great idea until they start winning, and then people start going mad. Remember when UCD were contesting 2 Leinster club finals back in the day, and it's great to see them doing well or whatever, and then they win a Dublin County title and people start going mad and start going back questioning the rules and all this kind of crack. It's funny, obviously, that Imokilly were beaten by another kind of, not a divisional side, but another kind of amalgamated side. I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think Russell Rovers played with Imokilly last year. So you had Declan Dalton and a couple of more who played in the senior final with Imokilly, the divisional side, and then won the intermediate title with his own club. So they went up senior this year. So
that was Father O'Neill's had gone up senior. Russell Rovers had won the junior.
Yeah, Father O'Neill, sorry. So they couldn't, they're not eligible to play with them this year. So you can only pull from sides that are not senior, so intermediate or junior sides, to the best of my knowledge. I'm open to correction on that, but I think that's fairly accurate. So they had lost a couple of big players, and Declan Dalton, obviously, most notably. And probably weren't going to be as strong this year, but it's a big win for UCC, in fairness. And like we talked about, would I be right in saying Lixnaw knocked out of the Kerry Championship?
Last bit of a shock, yeah.
So Shane Conway can focus his sole attention on UCC now as well. And I know Neil Montgomery scored 5 points as well. Offhand, I can't think of his club in Waterford, but he's definitely not. I think he's De La Salle, actually. So they were beaten last week in the Waterford Championship. He's De La Salle, yeah. So now they have a couple of lads that are out of their county championships in their own county and can focus their full attention to UCC. So UCC could be very hard beaten now, and there could be more of an uproar about a side similar to Imokilly dominating, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, Seamus Harnedy not being there, that's a huge blow, because he's such a ball winner and dominant player at inter-county level at times, so you can imagine what he's doing at club. So that's very interesting. We'll obviously keep an eye on the Cork Championship going forward. Now, the reason we're going to go back to Waterford for a second here is the West Waterford Intermediate Championship final was on. Ballyduff Upper beat Clashmore Kinsale Beg, but it wasn't until after penalties, which they won 4-3. So obviously it'd be high drama there, and a pity there's no crowd. But there was that Ulster Intermediate game last year that Sambo McNaughton had victory. They won 1-0 on penalties, the team he was managing. But how do you feel about games being decided on penalties? I've no issue with it. I'd nearly go with golden score, like play two sets of 10 minutes and then go to golden score if you want. But like, people say, it's unfair to decide it on penalties. Is it? I mean, that's just life. Someone has to win.
Yeah, it was going to be decided on the day some way, so it's probably as good a way as any. I do like the goal and score thing, because I think it would just be fascinating, because you throw in the ball at the start of it and you're like, no one wants to pull, no one wants to do anything, but you don't want to, and like, would everyone sit back and give them a long range point effort? It'd be really they couldn't really sit back. I think it'd be absolutely fascinating, because you could score from 100 yards in. I think the drama of it all, and I just think it could play out unbelievably interesting. The penalties obviously play out very, very dramatically as well. Obviously, Tyke de Borca's Clashmore Kinsale Beg, that'd be his side. He would have been just back from his cruciate, I assume, in recent months. So he would have been leading the charge there.
Scored his penalty, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting final pair in Ballyduff Upper versus Ballyduff Lower in the Waterford County Intermediate Hurling final. And as Jamie O'Keefe said on Twitter, a commentator's nightmare, that's just, you're trying to shorten it to Ballyduff, and then you're like Ballyduff Upper, and then Ballyduff, and nobody knows when you're talking about Ballyduff Upper or Ballyduff Lower. But that'll be an interesting final. I've no great issue with the penalties. I do think the goal and score would be very, very interesting one to trial though.
Yeah, and the Kilkenny Senior Hurling League final, that also went to penalties. So Dixborough and O'Loughlin Gales, two city clubs, 120 apiece, and then Dixborough win 3-0 on penalties. I mean, it's fairly decisive to not score any of your penalties. You'd have to be fairly disappointed. But then again, who's going to be preparing for that eventuality?
Yeah, I think Dara Houlihan, the Dixborough goalie, saved all 3 penalties, and the Borough scored their 3 penalties. So it was over halfway through the penalty shootout, which is unusual. Funny enough, these two sides actually drew in the league final last year as well, and I think Dixborough won that as well. Aidan Nolan is flying for the Borough. I think he was dropped from the Kilkenny panel in around February. I think he scored around 1-5. And Killian Buckley apparently was brilliant again for Dixborough. Seems to be absolutely flying. I think he went off with a facial injury, had to get a few stitches. But it should be grand for should be like back training in a couple of days. They're playing a quarter final now in 2 weeks' time. The Shield final, on paper, probably I don't know if you call it an upset, but definitely a fairly kind of unusual scoreline. Clare beat James Stephens 122 to 12 points. When you kind of look into it a bit more, the village rested a number of players: Luke Scanlon, Niall Brazen, Matthew Rue, Keane Kenny. I think Cheddar Plunkett side were missing up to 10 players, so they had an awful lot of new players coming in there. I think Lester Ryan, obviously, who was on the Kilkenny panel in recent years, and All-Ireland winning captain in 2014, he went off injured for Clare in the first half. Chris Bulger, who was on the Kilkenny panel a couple of years ago as well, I remember him starting against Wexford in the Leinster final down in Wexford Park in 17. He played as a one-man full forward, and he got 7 or 8 points from play, absolutely went to town. But God, like we talking about phony wars, this definitely was a phony war, because the village seemed to rest 2/3 of their team, so their priority is definitely quarter-final action in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, things were it was much more high stakes in Carlow in the semi-finals there. Ballinkillen beat Naomh, or St Mullins, who were obviously Leinster finalists last year. So Ballinkillen are through to the Carlow final, and Mount Leinster, they saw off Naomh Owen fairly handily, 122 to 11 points. But you can't ignore that Ballinkillen scoreline. They were down by 8 points to 12 at half time. They won the second half, 112 to 1-7. So that's very good going to turn it around in that fashion. But it was the second time they'd beaten them in the championship this year. They beat them in the group stages, and I think they might have won by 3 goals. James Doyle, he was out through injury for St Mullins, so that's a massive loss. And people might remember the sheep farmer Sean Murphy, playing midfield for Carlow footballers a couple of years ago. He was in at the edge of the square here for Ballinkillen, and apparently he did a world of damage, real bear in the square. If the lad is able to handle sheep, he's able to handle a full back, you'd imagine. And our brothers Kieran and Shawnee Whelan, they were also very good. So like, this would be a Ballinkillen team that would have, like I said, Sean Murphy, David English, Rory Dunbar, Daryl Roberts, players like this. And after the strife they had last year, you know, with the situation of the footballers and the hurlers being scheduled more or less at the same time in the kerfuffle with all that, it's unreal for them to turn it around and deliver a first county final in 16 years.
Yeah, it's savage. And I was talking about Mount Leinster, and we're talking about Shell Maliers as well. They're getting the chance to focus full attention on the small ball, so they don't have any of those interruptions or anything like that, and it's definitely playing to them. I believe Kieran Whelan was outstanding at midfield, as you said there. His brother Shawnee hit 3 monsters of points from wing back. The full back actually came up and got the penalty goal for them, which brought them back into it again. And Sean Murphy, as I said, is outstanding. I think Marty Kavanagh, even though he's on the losing side, was unbelievable by all accounts. He scored 1-7 from play and a handful of frees on top of that. Got a great goal apparently, which was a big long solo run. And deja vu nearly happened at the end again, because I think Mullins has had 2 close-in frees where they went for goal. They both went in, I think, last year, but one of them went over and one of them was stopped this year. And Ballinkillen held on. Massive scoring as well, 120 to 119 is great scoring. So it was obviously a seriously entertaining game. And I think Ballinkillen's juniors won the semi-final at the weekend as well. So it's a big week coming up for them with junior and senior finals in the parish.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mount Leinster, I think, probably not a huge shock that they won, and you know they're in good form. They were 7 points up at the break, 12 points to 5, and Chris Nolan got a goal 13 minutes into the second half, and they fairly coasted from there. Plenty of drama in the Antrim Championship recently. So just over the weekend, O'Donovan Rossa, they got a victory, and so did Cucullins as well. I think they won't beat O'Donovan Rossa. They won't beat O'Donovan Rossa by a point. Oh right, okay, fair enough. And then Rory.
No, sorry, I'm looking back at results from a while ago. My apologies. No,
trying to make an idiot out of me here. Yeah, and
you're right in first place.
And then Cushendall and Shamrocks, they got victories as well, so we'll see how that pans out. Justin Louth, St. Feckin's beat Knockbridge. Roscommon Gales, they lost to Atleague in the Roscommon Championship. Breda and Ballygalget, just a point victory there for Ballygalget, 120 to 119. And in Meath then, Longwood beat Killy-Lyon, and Kilmessan, they beat Blackhall Gales. So anything else to touch on before we finish up?
No, it was great to have a county final at the weekend, and obviously to be a Waterford county final to look forward to next weekend, and a Carlow county final as well. So finals will be coming thick and fast in certain counties. I think by all accounts the counties that have went with one code at the moment, I think they're kind of happy enough at least that they'll have one code played and can get stuck into the second one. Whether that's halted or anything with COVID, we don't know, but it's great to have. It's a different type of feel to it, definitely, these knockout games, even down to the Passage game yesterday. There was a couple of lads even waiting outside the grounds, you know, like Passage kind of stalwarts and that type of thing, waiting to just even chat to the lads after. Just shows what it means to people. It's definitely a different feel to it, but it's great that it's going ahead, and some seriously intriguing games over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And don't forget, we were brought to you by orgaretro.com. If you want to get these jerseys, there's a whole host of county jerseys across the board, both hurling and football counties. Go to orgaretro.com, put in the promo code OurGame, and you get 15% off. Thanks very much, Michael.
Cheers, Shane. Good man.